歡迎各位
Friends of the media, welcome to the press conference on the policy address. This press conference will go from 5:50 to 6:30. We will focus on attracting enterprises and trial for talents. We have with us Financial Secretary Mr. Paul Chan, Mr. Chek Wing-hing, Deputy Chief Secretary for Administration, Mr. Eric Zhang, Secretary for Constitution and Mainland Affairs, Mr. Algernon Yao, Secretary for Commerce and Economic Development, and Mr. Chris Sun, Secretary for Labour and Welfare. The speakers will first deliver opening remarks, followed by a presentation, and then the floor will be open for questions. Please limit to 2 questions only and be succinct. And if you have other questions on other policy matters, please leave them to another press conference. Just lower the mic. All right, thank you. Financial Secretary will have the floor. Hong Kong citizens, friends from the media, good afternoon. In the policy address delivered by the Chief Executive yesterday, one of the highlights is to continue to create strong impetus for growth with focus on competing for enterprises and competing for talents. Diversified and sustainable economic growth hinges on diversified industries, clustering of enterprises as well as talents. When enterprises and talents gather, there will be new room and new opportunities for development. And a vibrant and energetic atmosphere can be built. Today, with the Deputy Chief Secretary for Administration and the 3 secretaries, Secretary for Commerce and Economic Development, Secretary for Labour and Welfare, and Secretary for Constitution and Mainland Affairs, we'd like to brief you on the philosophy and initiatives set out in the policy address. For this policy address, we have adopted out-of-the-box thinking in formulating and implementing the relevant initiatives. We take a proactive approach in planning and reaching out, and we also go full throttle. In areas where global competition is keen and where a government-led approach is needed, we boldly take up the responsibility and take the lead in pushing it forward. In areas where market mechanism is needed, we provide a favorable environment and conditions to give play to market forces. Specifically, we will set up dedicated offices and teams to proactively reach out to our target so as to attract enterprises and trial for talents, so that we can take a pragmatic approach to realize our goals. On attracting enterprises, within this year, the Office for Attracting Strategic Enterprises, led by me, will be established. It will be tasked with attracting high potential and representative strategic enterprises from around the globe, particularly those from industries of strategic importance such as life and health technology, artificial intelligence and data science, fintech and advanced manufacturing and new energy technology. Special facilitation measures and one-stop services will be provided for these enterprises. And to better place the focus on the market and to ensure effective implementation, we will also set up an advisory committee comprising representatives from relevant business sectors and social leaders to advise on the overall strategy. We'll also expand the function of the economic and trade offices of the Hong Kong SAR government, set up in the mainland and overseas, by setting up the dedicated teams for attracting businesses and talents therein, with the Office for Attracting Strategic Enterprises and the Talent Service Unit as their counterparts. We'll also cast a wider net in trawling for enterprises and talents by proactively reaching out to our target and attracting them to setting up offices in Hong Kong for development. We firmly believe that this new enterprise scouting initiative will help us attract major enterprises in high potential industries with keen competition to set up their operations in Hong Kong. Their success will in turn facilitate Hong Kong's development. It will also create more quality jobs for our people. To further benefit everyone in Hong Kong, I will set aside $30 billion from the Future Fund to establish the Co-Investment Fund for attracting enterprises to come to Hong Kong, and we may consider co-investment based on the potential of the enterprises or individual projects in stimulating local industrial developments as well as employment. We believe that through a package of initiatives, we can create new room to demonstrate Hong Kong's competitive edge and create a greater capacity, room, and impetus for Hong Kong's economic development. I will first invite Secretary Yao to explain our strategy in attracting enterprises, and then Deputy Chief Secretary for Administration and the Secretary for Labor and Welfare will explain the Talent Service Unit. Thank you, Financial Secretary. Friends of the media, as explained by the Financial Secretary just now, this government attaches great importance to attracting enterprises and businesses. In light of the new initiatives announced in the policy address, the Commerce and Economic Development Bureau will proactively start a number of initiatives to attract enterprises and continue to create impetus for economic growth in Hong Kong. I will give you two highlights of the work of our Bureau. First, I will talk about the details of setting up the Office for Attracting Strategic Enterprises, or OASIS, as well as the setting up of an advisory committee. And I will also talk about the setting up of dedicated teams for attracting businesses and talents. Now, as far as the OASIS and the advisory committee are concerned, the Office for Attracting Strategic Enterprises will be led by the Financial Secretary, and there will be focus on life science, artificial intelligence, fintech, advanced manufacturing, data science, and we will attract representative strategic enterprises from these industries. Together with the Financial Secretary's Office, our Bureau will engage in discussions on the setting up of the office. For example, we will draw up a list of target enterprises and provide steer to the dedicated teams for attracting businesses and talents to reach out proactively and carry out negotiations with enterprises. There will also be the formulation of attractive special facilitation measures covering land, tax, and financing aspects that are applicable to the enterprises, and we'll also provide them with one-stop facilitation services such as visa application and education arrangements for their children. And as mentioned by the Financial Secretary, $30 billion will be set aside from the Future Fund to establish the Co-Investment Fund for attracting enterprises to set up operations in Hong Kong and investing in their businesses. The government will also set up the Advisory Committee on Attracting Strategic Enterprises. We hope that the Advisory Committee will comprise representatives from business sectors and social leaders so as to advise the Financial Secretary on the overall strategy and to give an overview on the strategies adopted by other countries and the demands. As for the dedicated teams for attracting businesses and talents, the government will expand the functions of mainland offices and overseas economic and trade offices. The CEDB will oversee the setting up of the dedicated teams for attracting businesses and talents under the ETOs. These dedicated teams will be tasked to reach out proactively to target enterprises and gather information of relevant enterprises for reference to support the work of OASIS. Second, it will be tasked with liaising with target enterprises, providing them with appropriate information and assistance in line with the investment promotion facilitation services of OASIS. Third, It will be tasked with telling the good story of Hong Kong, promoting opportunities and advantages of Hong Kong, as well as various schemes and initiatives for attracting quality enterprises. The ETOs will continue to adopt a multi-pronged approach and enhance publicity and promotion. It will also host and participate in different activities to actively persuade quality enterprises to come to Hong Kong. On trawling for talent, the Talent Service Unit under the Labour and Welfare Bureau will also take the lead in this regard. We believe the new measures announced in the policy address will be attractive and will be able to attract strategic enterprises to come to Hong Kong and make investment so that we can tap new opportunities and tap new markets. And through investments by the strategic enterprises in Hong Kong, we'll be able to attract capital as well. So it's a win-win. Our Bureau will continue to work with the Financial Secretary's Office and other departments and bureaus so that with concerted effort we can promote investment in Hong Kong and attract more enterprises to set up operations in Hong Kong. Thank you.
Yes, Warner, please. Thank you, Secretary. Fellow citizens, friends of the media, the Chief Executive delivered the policy address, which is a very meaty one. It has addressed a lot of the aspirations from the community, and this includes the measures to draw talents, which is highly anticipated. I'm going to outline the rationale of this policy, and then I hand you over to the SLW regarding the policy details. Hong Kong is facing a severe manpower shortage. Over the past 2 years, our working population, including those with high educational attainment and skills, is experiencing a reduction. And the COVID has also affected the economic activities in Hong Kong and in the world. This also affects the talents being recruited and their retention. The world over, they are targeting at trawling talents, and we need talents to achieve economic recovery. In Hong Kong, we need to increase the growth impetus to tie in with the 14th Five-Year Plan, the GPA and the BRI, and we do need to have talents. Under these circumstances, we should adopt a proactive attitude to compete for top talents from outside of Hong Kong to replenish a pool of talents. To make sure that in the economic competition, we should be able to maintain the competitive edge. The measures that we roll out are intended to recruit overseas talents with high educational attainment and working experience and skills. There are a number of measures that have been promulgated in the policy address. We have enhanced the talent admission scheme, and we have enhanced the coordination, and we will be refunding the extra stamp duty paid by these eligible talents. And we also set up an institution for these. There are 4 key considerations in mapping out the policy. First, it has to be precise. The measures should be targeting talents that Hong Kong needs. Second, swift. The measures should yield results quickly. Third, flexible. The measures should be sufficiently flexible and allow adjustments if and when necessary. And last but not least, proper. The measures should avoid impacting on local workers, in particular the job opportunities for local workers, not least the young people. Now I hand you over to the SLW regarding the labor situation and the measures to recruit and retain talents. I'm going to spend about 10 minutes time to take you through the specific measures to draw talents. Now there are two backgrounds. The first one is the global economic situation. The major entities are competing for talents the world over. And this is the number one resource that we all need. Over the past 2 years, compared with Q2 of 2020 to Q2 of 2022, the actual labor force recorded a significant decline of 140,000. If you dig deeper, about 2/3 are high-skilled workforce. And if you dig even deeper, between 25 and 39, the number is the highest and close to about 78,000. So obviously, there is a gap there that has to be plugged. With the policy address, the Chief Executive has put forward a whole raft of measures. But I hope that we should be able to recruit talents from outside to make contribution to our economy. There are 4 types there. Like the Financial Secretary said a moment ago, this is a whole package of measures. On the far left is a new scheme. And this is the Top Talent Power Scheme, or TTPS. I'm going to go into further detail about the TTPS. The second category is to identify the inadequacy of the existing schemes to make them more effective. This is an improvement to the existing scheme. Third, this is a new one. We may have the talent ambition scheme. We still have to use all the relevant tools. And we're going to be setting up a talent service unit to provide one-stop service to identify talents and to compete for talents. And also at the mainland offices and the overseas ETOs, they will be setting up their own dedicated teams for attracting businesses and talents. And I'll be talking about the division of work there. The fourth category is also a new one. When you recruit all these talents, we have to make sure that they will have a longer stay, and this is a measure to retain the talents. There are 2 ways to go about this. We're going to have a longer visa period. Second, like the DCS said a moment ago, for the eligible talents, we'll be refunding the extra stamp duty paid by them. First of all, now with regard to these TTPS, there are 3 types of people that are eligible. The first one is the annual salary reached $2.5 million or above the past year. That would be fulfilling this requirement. It doesn't have any regard to the background of the education attainment. The criterion is that the annual salary reached $2.5 million in the past year or above. With this level of salary, it must be a talent of high caliber.
Now, the second category refers to those with certain academic qualifications, which would make them eligible under the TTPS. If this person graduates from the world's top 100 universities, regardless of when they graduated from the university, if they have at least 3 years of work experience in the past 5 years, they will be eligible under the TTPS. So we're targeting graduates from the world's top 100 universities, regardless of the year of graduation, as long as they have at least 3 years of work experience in the past 5 years. For the third category, we're referring to younger graduates from the world's top 100 universities. That means if they graduated in the past 5 years and yet to fulfill the 3-year work experience requirement, they are still welcome to come to Hong Kong to give it a try, except that we have an annual quota for this third category, up to 10,000 applications per year. So we have 3 categories of eligible talents. First, no regard to the academic qualifications as long as the annual salary reached 2.5 million or above in the past year. Second category, if the person graduates from the world's top 100 universities with at least 3 years of work experience in the past 5 years. The third category belongs to graduates from the world's top 100 universities, in the past 5 years, subject to an annual quota of 10,000. Next, we will also enhance talent admission schemes. The first one is the general employment policy that refers to the admission of talents from overseas other than the mainland. The second scheme is the admission scheme for mainland talents and professionals, ASMTP, that's tailor-made for mainland talents. These 2 schemes are very similar. The enhancement is that we want to make it clear for employers and the applicants to be sure whether they are eligible under the 2 schemes. First, we will introduce the talent list under the 2 schemes. So if the vacancies fall under the 13 professions as listed in the talent list, employers are no longer required to provide proof of difficulties in local recruitment. So as long as the vacancy is one listed in the talent list, which at the moment carries 13 professions, then one would be eligible. Second, if the vacancy provides an annual salary of 2 million Hong Kong dollars or above, then employers are not required to prove that it's difficult to recruit locally. Now, I talked about the talent list, which at the moment includes 13 professions. We are going to update the talent list very soon. Our goal is to update the talent list within the first quarter of next year to reflect the latest manpower shortage situation in various professions. In addition, we're going to suspend the annual quota of 4,000 for a period of 2 years for Quality Migrant Admission Scheme, QMAS. So in the coming 2 years, if you're coming under the QMAS, no quota will be set. We're also going to relax the immigration arrangements for non-local graduates. At the moment, a non-local graduate can come to Hong Kong for work and stay for 1 year. We're going to extend the limit of stay from 1 year to 2 years so that they can find a job in Hong Kong. Another relaxation is that we're going to expand the scope to cover those who graduated from the Greater Bay Area campus of Hong Kong University. And at the moment, we have the Baptist University having a campus in Zhuhai, and also the CUHK in another campus in Shenzhen, and the UST having a campus in Guangzhou. That means graduates from the GBA campuses of these 3 universities will be eligible under the IANG, and they can stay in Hong Kong for up to 2 years. We'll also enhance the Technology Talent Admission Scheme, or TACTAS. At the moment, there is a local employment requirement, and it will be lifted. The quota validity period will also be extended from 1 year to 2 years. We will also expand coverage to more emerging technology areas. I've just gone through the new initiatives to admit talents and also enhancements to existing talent admission schemes. But with these initiatives. It's all about implementing them properly. And that is why we're going to set up a people-oriented dedicated service unit. In short, we're going to set up a talent service unit led by the Chief Secretary for Administration. This unit will be tasked with a number of things. First, the unit will formulate strategies to recruit talents, and that there should be communication. And once we have rather certain or we have ironed out the details for the talent admission schemes, we can provide one-stop service. Through the talent service unit, applicants can inquire about the application procedures, and this one-stop service will also provide assistance. And for the overseas talents, we will provide facilitation services to help out with their children's education and other day-to-day arrangements. So we are reaching out proactively to invite them to come to Hong Kong. For the mainland offices and the overseas economic and trade offices, or ETOs, dedicated teams for attracting businesses and talents will be set up respectively. For example, for an ETO in one place, there may be a strength in certain industry and university, and through the dedicated teams, we can reach out to the talents and enterprises. A more focused approach will be taken. After scouting talents, the next question is how we retain talents for long-term development in Hong Kong. And there are two ways. After they have secured a job in Hong Kong, we will extend the limit of stay of employment visas. That means after they have secured recruitment or employment, they may be issued with an employment visa for a maximum period of 3 years. So they are certain that they can stay for at least 3 years. And we're going to digitize the visa application starting this year to facilitate applicants. If a talent coming to Hong Kong would like to acquire property, we have this refund arrangement. For eligible incoming talents, and that's, as I mentioned, those coming under the QMAS, General Employment Policy, ASMTP, or immigration arrangements for non-graduates, the Technology Talent Admission Scheme, as well as second generation talent admission scheme, as well as the Top Talent Pass scheme, then the incoming talent will be regarded as eligible. Now, once this talent has become a permanent resident in Hong Kong, he will be eligible for the refund of the buyer's stamp duty and new residential stamp duty paid for the first residential property purchased, which he still owns. However, he will still be required to pay the ad valorem stamp duty at Scale 2 rates. So this will be aligned with the treatment for Hong Kong permanent residents. And I'd like to give you some salient points. For the refund measure, we want to make sure that we will not provide incoming talents with treatment more favorable than that for Hong Kong permanent residents who are first-time buyers. And this measure will only apply to sale and purchase agreements signed on or after the 19th of October this year. At the time of acquisition of the residential property, the talent must hold a visa under the designated talent admission schemes. And at the time of acquisition of the property, he should not be a beneficial owner of any other residential property in Hong Kong. Say if at the time of acquiring a new property, he is already an owner in any way of another residential property, then he is not eligible unless he's replacing his only residential property in Hong Kong. And the talent can only apply for a refund after becoming Hong Kong permanent resident. And when the talent applies for a refund, the talent should still hold the relevant residential property. And the talent can only apply for refund in respect of one residential property. The government intends to introduce the bill to the Legislative Council in the first quarter of next year. And refund applications will only be accepted after the bill has been passed.
You must be concerned that with these whole series of talent schemes, what will the KPI be like? We expect that between 2023 and 2025, for these 3-year period, with the implementation of these new measures, we would be able to admit at least 35,000 talents annually with an intended duration of stay of at least 12 months. And these talents will be staying in Hong Kong on a long-term basis. This represents, if you take these 35,000 as the yardstick, this represents an increase of 40% over the annual average number. Thank you. Thanks very much, SLW. Any questions? Right, it's time for questions. Just a reminder that before you put questions, please identify the organization you represent, and please limit yourself to no more than 2 questions and make it brief, please. The third row in the middle, lady over there, please. Cable TV. A question for the Secretary. In the policy address, there are many measures regarding the admission of talents, but there is, the policy address is really silent on the retention of local talents. Is the government of the view that it would be good enough to lure talents from outside instead of keeping talents here? If the inflow cannot replenish the outflow, what's going to be like? And there are comments that there is not much mentioned about poverty and poverty alleviation. There is no KPI in this regard. How can the government make sure that the wealth gap will be addressed? If I may take the first question first, retention of talents. As we listen to the Secretary over the past 2 years, we've seen a reduction of 140,000 persons in the workforce. I've been in Hong Kong for more than 6 decades. People come and people go. It has been the occurrence over the past years. I don't think we have to be unduly worried about it. In particular, some Hong Kong people have stayed in other parts of the world for some time and they still prefer Hong Kong, and they would be coming back. Now, for people who are still in Hong Kong, I think it is important to note that we're not offering any favorable policies. Administratively, operationally, and politically, this is not going to be feasible if we were to implement these measures. Over the past couple of days, we've seen comments from the media that we have to let them know or let them see a good prospect of staying in Hong Kong. And they will feel that Hong Kong is a decent place to live in. Hong Kong is really getting better. Our greatest advantage in Hong Kong, which is non-existent in other parts of the world, is that we are backed up by the mainland. We have connection with the rest of the world. The 14th Five-Year Plan, the Greater Bay Area, the Belt and Road Initiative, will bring about massive opportunities. With the passage of COVID, the development potential is going to be unlimited. As to a place where we choose to live. I mean, we're so used to what's happening in Hong Kong. There is nothing special in our eyes. I'm sure you have been to many different places. If you cast your mind back, Hong Kong is a really unique place. We have all the advantages in terms of transport, healthcare, F&B, universities. In Asia, we have 5 universities that in the top 100 ranking, and this is something that is doing us proud. I don't want to name names here. There are many places that have higher population and their economic strength is stronger than Hong Kong, but we've never seen a place where there are 5 universities that top-notch, they're in the top 100. So our education system speaks for itself. Now we have the countryside. Mr. Sullivan came to Hong Kong, and he said that within 20 minutes he could travel to the country parks, and he could go jogging in the country park trails. And we do have all the cultural and art activities, and our safety is really top in the world. Is Hong Kong going to be better in our development? For this term of administration, we can see that the whole team is really working very hard for the benefit of Hong Kong. The policy address, as the Secretary said, there are a lot of measures that really out of the box kind of thinking, and there are many measures that are beneficial to the public. Hong Kong is moving in a really positive direction. So all in all, I think the reason for Hong Kong people to stay is that we do offer ample opportunities. Hong Kong is our home. I've worked and lived in other parts of the world. If you've been outside of Hong Kong, you would realize that Hong Kong doesn't have any differential treatment. And I mean, there may be happenings that make people feel really unpleasant. And we have the GPA, and we have really unlimited opportunities. Right, poverty alleviation, let me address this briefly. In paragraph 95 of the policy address, he makes it very clear that we would like to tackle poverty in a precision manner. I mean, with poverty, if you follow this all along, there is not much mention of poverty, but all these measures are really tackling poverty. One of the examples is the public housing. The policy address devotes a lot of coverage to how we can raise the speed, the efficiency, the quality, and the quantity in terms of public housing. You asked whether there is the poverty KPI. If you turn to the annex, the first KPI is precisely the poverty KPI, and this is the Strive and Rise scheme headed up by the CS. Now, the government is very concerned about the poverty. It would like to tackle poverty with precision. Of the 110 KPIs, the first one, the very first one is the poverty KPI. Dealing with poverty, I think it has to do with economic development as well. So in the policy address, you get to see that the Hong Kong SAR government emphasizes that we have to enrich our economic structure. We have to have diversified development. There are some comments that we are focusing a lot of attention on finance and real estate. That may be a fact, but looking ahead in the policy address and also in the previous administration, we have devoted an awful lot of resources to promote the development of innovation and technology. Now, the development in this area will be the driving engine of economic development, and we do have competition between the economic entities, and this is the determining factor of success. From the Hong Kong's point of view, we are rolling out all these measures and initiatives. We're devoting the resources other than promoting I&T development. The ultimate objective is to provide more good job opportunities for the people of Hong Kong to pick and choose.
So this is also an important aspect. Next question. Third row on my side, this lady in green. Government officials, good afternoon. I'm from Hong Kong Economic Journal. At the radio phone-in program, an audience talked about freedom being upheld in Hong Kong and people leaving Hong Kong because the policies are too harsh. Will the political situation in Hong Kong affect talent admission? Some say that if we do not have 0+0 arrangement, or if we do not relax the quarantine arrangements, these talent admission schemes will not be meaningful. What is your take? Do you think that the quarantine measures is posing an obstacle to talent coming to Hong Kong? As I said in my opening remarks, against the backdrop of this global race for talent, we can't rely solely on market forces to direct our development. Other places nearby have shown that the government plays an active role, and this is also mentioned in Presidency's keynote speech on the 1st of July, that we should combine government efficiency with market forces. As far as trawling for talents are concerned, as mentioned by the Deputy Chief Secretary, indeed, some people have left Hong Kong for various reasons. They have a mind of their own. I shall not make any conjecture. However, in the past year or so, COVID has dealt a significant blow to our competitive edge. Since the start of this new administration, as you can see, there's been a major change in terms of our anti-epidemic strategy and quarantine arrangements. We take a scientific approach, we rely on empirical evidence, and we fight the epidemic with precision. At one time, we recorded a daily caseload of 10,000. In fact, recently, we've recorded 4,000-5,000 cases a day, and yet, instead of closing down certain premises or tightening certain social distancing measures, we're doing otherwise. And we've also collected data to tap the situation. For example, we scrapped the flight suspension mechanism, and we've also shortened the quarantine period to 0+3. And as the Chief Executive puts it, we don't want backtracking or rolling back on our path to normalcy. And that is why we are taking prudent, small steps, one at a time. Hong Kong is an international city. We need to have good connectivity with the rest of the world so that we will be given a strong impetus for economic growth. Apart from upholding anti-epidemic measures, the government is going to hold some major events. For example, we have the financial summit early next month, and there will be a FinTech week coming up. So that's the direction we're heading in. Next. Third row, this reporter in black. I'm from Hong Kong Economic Times. First, about KPIs. According to statistics in 2020 and 2021, under the various talent admission schemes, the number of approved applications amounted to 67,000 and 32,000 respectively. And according to the latest KPIs, you expect to have 35,000 talents staying in Hong Kong under the scheme. Is it too conservative? Can you set a higher KPI? About enterprises of strategic importance, is there any target enterprise that you have in mind? Chris, why don't you take the question? Thank you. In year 2021, there are two kinds of talents staying in Hong Kong, some for a shorter term. For example, these talents may stay in Hong Kong for just 1 or 2 weeks for the purpose of holding exhibitions. We're looking at the longer term stayers. That means they should stay for at least 15 months. And we believe we should target talents to stay for at least 12 months. Now, if we look at the figures, from year 2000, every year about 23 to 26,000 talents stayed in Hong Kong for at least the period of time mentioned. So starting from 2023, our goal is to be able to attract at least 35,000 talents who would stay in Hong Kong for a longer time. That's the minimum. That's the minimum number we seek to reach. About attracting enterprises of strategic importance, Algernon, the office will be established within this year. And in setting up the office, we will discuss jointly with the other bureaus and departments, and there will be focus on certain industries such as life science, artificial intelligence, health technology, fintech, advanced manufacturing, new energy technology, etc. And as mentioned just now, the ETOs will be tasked with gathering information of these strategic enterprises so that there will be interaction and exchange of information with the office, and an advisory committee will be set up comprising social leaders and representatives of the business sectors. We will seek advice from the committee and draw up a list of interested enterprises. We haven't drawn up this list yet. We will set up the office within this year, and then in 2023 we will be implementing this initiative and take action to grab the businesses and talents. Right, next reporter, please. Closer to me, second row, this reporter in green.
Reporter from South China Morning Post. I have a question for the Financial Secretary. So the co-investment fund, $30 billion is a big amount of the public expenditure. Would the government bet on higher risk investment? And who would be accountable for investment losses? And what would the government do with the investment return? Would it be dedicated to improve the residents' livelihood or somewhere else? And would you comment whether it's a fearless move for Hong Kong to adopt a more interventionalist strategy on economic development like Singapore? So have small government, big markets, and positive non-interventionalism become history? And finally, are there any mechanisms in place to prevent something similar to the One Malaysia development Berhad scandal from happening? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. The purpose of the co-investment fund is to support our economic development. So as earlier on outlined by Secretary Yao, we are concentrating in a few areas, namely life science, new renewable energy, new materials, advanced manufacturing, etc. The purpose is, instead of doing it from scratch ourselves, I think it is more effective for us to attract those leading companies to come to Hong Kong to set up their operations. In the process, those companies have to make commitment to us as to, say, for example, what kind of technology they are bringing to the table, what level of capital investments that they are going to make, how many jobs they will be able to create. These are just a few criteria or a few factors that we are going to look at. But essentially is what is the strategic importance of these enterprises to Hong Kong in our ambition to realize our development in certain sector with concrete indicators and commitments. In those circumstances, there may be cases where the investee companies would like certain commitment from the government. And in that sense, depending on the projects and depending on the nature of set up here, we may consider making investment along with them. That is why we call it co-investment. In making this co-investment, as I earlier mentioned, strategic value, creation of job, important relevance and importance to our economic industry policy are important, but at the same time, we require return on investment. So it is not a grant. We require return on investment. Although the return can be more long-term, can be risk-adjusted, but we do expect a return. As to the return on investment, how are we going to apply it? At the moment, the idea, since the total sum at the moment is not too big, 30 billion, the idea is that if we are able to profit from those investments, this investment will be plowed back to the fund to continue making additional investments where appropriate.
Okay,
Next question, please. The lady in pink at the far end, please. Now TV. A question for Mr. Zhang about competing for top talents. Now, with the opening of the border, this will certainly facilitate that. Have you got any notification from the mainland about relaxing the criteria to 2+5? Also, this is for Mr. Sun. Now, with all these programs, you have the TTPS, the Top Talent Pass scheme. Now, in absence of this scheme, can they still apply to come to Hong Kong under the QMAS, or is it the case the QMAS is more complicated, more cumbersome in the application, and that's why you launched this TTPS? Right? Let Mr. Zhang take the question first. Now, you talked about the relaxation to 2+5. I've never heard of anything of this nature at the moment. We maintain close liaison with the mainland authorities regarding the border reopening. We have a liaison with the mainland, and we are still looking at the arrangement. Like together with Shenzhen and Guangdong, we are conducting detailed studies. As to whether there is a news like that, I've never heard of it. Mr. Christian, thank you for your question. If you notice, at the moment we have these talent mission schemes and that are based on jobs. You have to have a job offer before you can come to Hong Kong. The main feature of TTPS is that they can come to Hong Kong without any job offer as long as you are part of the three categories of high caliber talents. You have 2-year validity period. Now the difference is if you need a job to come to Hong Kong, it would be easier for big corporations, but we do have a lot of startups and SMEs that may experience difficulties. Since talents are so important to Hong Kong, I think we have to think out of the box and allow the top talents to come to Hong Kong first, so that the startups and the SMEs would have that much more choices. And also TTPS and the other emission schemes are different in that under TTPS the definition is very clear. To put it bluntly, if you look yourself in the mirror, you know whether you belong to this category, whether you earn more than $2.5 million per year, or whether you are graduates of top 100 universities, or whether you have 3 years of working experience. If you do, then you can come to Hong Kong. There is a very specific definition. As long as one tick all the boxes, we can grant the visa for them to come to Hong Kong straight away. Like the DCS said, we really want to make it quick, make it flexible, and make it specific. This has to be the last question in the interest of time. The last row, please. The lady over there. Economic Journal. Now this investment Corporation Limited, I mean, people compare that to Temasek, and also this salary requirement at the TTPS seems to be too high. I mean, will you be reducing this to a lower level? Is there any flexibility? Right, Chris. As I said a moment ago, the TTPS covers 2 types of people, annual salary of $2.5 million. Now for this category, we don't have any regard to the educational attainment and background. $2.5 million annual earnings. If you look at the workforce in Hong Kong, this is the top 1% of the workforce in Hong Kong. So these are really top-notch people. Also, if you have high qualifications, if you're a graduate from top 100 universities, and if you fulfill the working experience requirement, you can also come to Hong Kong under TTPS. Even if you don't have the working experience, you can come to Hong Kong in this category, although it is subject to 10,000. So we cover 3 different categories there under the TTPS. Right on the first question, this Hong Kong Investment Corporation Limited, how is it going to be operating, and how is it different from the Future Fund? The predecessor of the Future Fund is actually the Land Fund. This sum of money a couple of years ago has been handed over to the Hong Kong MA for management. But the Hong Kong MA makes investment with this money, especially longer-term investment, and they are cooperating with the private equity fund. So the practice is this is more like a limited liability partner, and the private equity fund or investment fund will be making the investment and then share the returns. This is how it works. A couple of years ago, if you recall, I have taken out $22 billion to set up the Hong Kong growth portfolio. And we have handed over the money to the Hong Kong MA to make investment, and they don't really make investment in Hong Kong products. And the objective of the exchange fund is to defend the linked rate system. So the Hong Kong MA never invested in Hong Kong products. Since they have to defend the linked rate system, and if there is an attack on us, we have to deploy the money. Under what circumstances would the attack occur? Now, it's normally when the circumstances are bad, we are vulnerable to attack. So we do have a certain scale in the fund, and if we invest in Hong Kong products, that would be detrimental to Hong Kong if this kind of situation occurs. So
So I set aside $22 billion from the future fund to make better use of our reserve to support our own industries and our own economy. And after setting aside the $22 billion from the fund, we started to invest in projects that would facilitate our development. And the fund set aside has all been allocated. And we have collaborations with different asset managers and fund managers. And that's the thinking behind this move. What happens now is that we have set up the new Hong Kong Investment Corporation Limited. We've set aside $30 billion, and $5 billion will also be set aside to set for the Greater Bay Area Fund as well as the Strategic Tech Fund. For the Greater Bay Area Fund and Strategic Tech Fund, the purpose is to support our own economic development and give a boost to our competitive edge. So after setting up the co-investments fund, we believe the Hong Kong Investment Corporation Limited should be set up so that all the funds can come under one umbrella. We'll continue with our existing strategy, but meanwhile, the fund set aside for co-investment fund can be used for more direct, proactive investments, such as for the purpose of attracting enterprises and talents. Innovation and technology is, of course, an important area, but we're not limiting ourselves to this area only. As long as the projects are beneficial for Hong Kong's economy with good return, then an investment will be made. That's the end of today's press conference. Thank you.
Yes.